What began as a simple palace garden party quickly turned into one of the most quietly seismic moments the monarchy has seen in years. Cameras may have caught a child's innocent gesture, but behind the soft smile of Prince Louis and the stunned silence of the onlookers was a deeper truth. The monarchy's youngest heir had just broken centuries of unwritten codes with a spoonful of dessert and an open heart. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It happened in a moment so small that many didn't even register it at first. A gesture tucked inside the warmth of spring, sunshine and soft chatter of palace staff families scattered across the manicured lawns. Yet within seconds, the atmosphere changed, because that tiny moment was enough to expose the gap between how the monarchy has always behaved and what it could become when stripped of its rigid borders. Prince Louis, with no awareness of hierarchy or the invisible lines separating him from the staff, families gathered around him, simply turned, smiled, and offered half his dessert to the shy child standing beside him, an act so natural it pierced through the heavy layers of royal decorum, like light through stained glass. For Catherine, standing only a few steps away, the impact was instant and overwhelming. Her eyes glistened, her hand rose instinctively to her chest, and in that quiet intake of breath was the entire story of a woman who had spent years fighting to reshape the cold traditions she once had to navigate alone. She wasn't just witnessing her son's generosity, she was watching a small, living confirmation of everything she had tried to instill in her children. Compassion over status, connection over titles, authenticity over performance. And yet, even as her heart swelled, the reactions around her told a different story. Senior royals stiffened. Aristocrats exchanged sharp glances. A few attendees tilted, their heads in disbelief, whispering behind their hands about what such a gesture implied. Royal blood mingling, even symbolically, with those far below the polished tiers of the hierarchy, was an unspoken deviation that unsettled those still clinging to the old codes. The murmurs travelled quickly, rippling outward in a way that even the faint spring breeze couldn't disguise. Some saw it as harmless sweetness, others as dangerous informality, and a select few recognized it instantly as a shift small but seismic toward a more human monarchy. And while the courtyard buzzed with confusion and wonder, someone captured the moment on their phone. Within hours, the clip was online, spreading faster than any carefully curated royal update ever could. The internet didn't hesitate. Tens of thousands of comments poured in, praising Louis's innocence and Catherine's emotional reaction. Hashtags surged, turning a single spoonful of dessert into a global talking point that the palace press office had certainly not planned for. What the institution wanted quiet and contained had now grown loud, messy, and beautifully uncontrollable. But what seemed like an innocent gesture from a 6-year-old would soon ripple through the corridors of power, because Catherine's response wasn't just emotional, it was personal. Behind Catherine's glassy-eyed smile was a cascade of memories she hadn't planned to revisit, not today, not in public. But as she watched Louis extend kindness with no awareness of rank or bloodline, something broke open. Her past as a commoner, the uphill climb through royal coldness, and her long fight to keep her children grounded all rushed back like a tidal wave. The stillness in her expression betrayed the war within images of her earliest days within the firm, flashing through her mind like ghosts she had never truly buried. She remembered the stiff introductions, the silence in the halls, the barely veiled judgment in the eyes of those who had measured her not by merit, but by lineage. She had walked into the palace as a hopeful young woman and quickly learned that proximity to royalty did not guarantee belonging. The titles came fast, but the warmth was slow and often absent. And now, in one tender moment, her son had shattered all that inherited frost with the simple offer of a spoonful of sweetness. She had made a vow quiet, fierce, and unshakable. If she could not escape the rigid etiquette imposed upon her, she would at least shield her children from it. Louis, George, and Charlotte would not be raised in the icy echo chamber that once made her question her worth. They would know the meaning of kindness, even within these golden gates. They would not become symbols of power detached from the people they claimed to serve. And now, watching Louis act on instincts she had poured into him behind closed doors, Catherine felt something ancient, unspoken shift inside her. It wasn't just a proud moment, it was a validation of everything she had dared to believe, that a different kind of royalty was possible. As aides moved around her with anxious glances, she whispered to one without breaking her gaze from Louis. "He just sees hearts." The words hung in the air like a quiet storm, unnoticed by many, but deeply unsettling to the few who still believed in rank over humanity. From the far edge of the gathering, Camilla watched the scene unfold, her expression unreadable, but her posture betraying discomfort. Tight-lipped and rigid, the Queen Consort said nothing, but her silence was louder than any spoken protest. She understood all too well the symbolic weight of what had just occurred. This wasn't merely a sweet moment between children. It was a glimpse of a new monarchy emerging, one shaped not by tradition, but by empathy, not by lineage, but by values, and Catherine was at the center of it. And then, for the first time in years, Catherine didn't suppress the emotion that welled up inside her. Her face softened, her eyes shimmered, and for a brief moment, she let herself be seen not as a princess, but as a mother. It was a public display of emotion so raw and rare, it froze the entire event in silent awe. Some smiled, others tensed. But no one could pretend the moment hadn't changed something. And yet, the moment that melted Catherine's heart may have inadvertently lit a quiet fire beneath the senior royals, because not everyone welcomed this new face of royalty. Palace invitations don't just happen, they are crafted, vetted, and layered with centuries of protocol. So how did this particular child, son of a second-tier staffer with no royal clearance, end up front and center with Prince Louis? The answer may reveal more about internal palace dynamics and Catherine's quiet reshuffling of old hierarchies. For those who understand how the monarchy operates, it was more than an oversight. It was a signal. A child born into a modest household, whose father had once been flagged in an internal review, had somehow bypassed the maze of approvals, seating charts, and proximity restrictions that usually safeguard the royal image. That level of access doesn't happen by accident, not within the palace machine. The child had been placed directly within arm's reach of the fifth in line to the throne, and for many insiders, the implications were deeply unsettling. What followed was a flurry of hushed inquiries. Courtiers began probing the guest list, dissecting staff approvals, and pointing fingers behind closed doors. What emerged was both predictable and quietly explosive. Internal sources confirmed that Catherine herself had intervened weeks prior, requesting that this year's event be less performative, more inclusive. The vague language had unsettled traditionalists, but no one dared challenge her directly. Yet beneath the smiles and garden party charm, many sensed a deliberate dismantling of old power structures. Catherine's fingerprints were all over it, and when senior aides suggested omitting certain families due to prior conduct concerns, one vetoed name stood out. The father of the child who would soon eat dessert with Prince Louis. That man, a mid-level logistics coordinator within the royal household, had only recently returned to full duties after a personnel dispute that had nearly ended his tenure. Though cleared of wrongdoing, his name still raised eyebrows among the establishment. His presence at a high-visibility royal event would, under normal circumstances, be unthinkable. Yet somehow, not only was he allowed in, his child was within inches of the royal heir. A quiet override had taken place, and multiple sources confirmed it came directly from Catherine's personal office. Officially, no explanation was given. Unofficially, it was interpreted as a test, a subtle but powerful statement about who gets to be seen, beside royalty, and why. The move was not without consequence. Several senior courtiers voiced concern that precedent was being shattered. One long-standing advisor reportedly warned that compassion cannot replace protocol. But those words fell flat in the face of public reaction to the viral moment. Catherine's instincts, once again, seemed aligned with the people, not the palace. Yet the decision also underscored something deeper. She was no longer content playing the peacemaker. She was now an architect, redrawing lines that had long divided the institution from its own humanity. And behind that strategic compassion may have been something even bolder, a quiet assertion of control, meant to test how far her influence now reached. As whispers grew louder within the palace walls, an even more shocking revelation emerged from none other than Prince William himself. What William said behind closed doors the night of the dessert incident left senior aides speechless and sent an unmistakable signal about which side of the monarchy he now champions. For those who always thought he walked the line between tradition and revolution, his mask may have just slipped. In a hushed, late-night meeting with his closest advisors, following the media storm surrounding Prince Louis's spontaneous act, William reportedly leaned back, exhaled slowly, and said just 7 words that shifted the entire room. He gets it from his mother. The words, seemingly simple, hit like a sledgehammer. It wasn't just praise, it was alignment. In a palace where neutrality is the last surviving relic of royal safety, William had just broken protocol in a way no one could ignore. It was a statement of legacy, of direction, and most alarmingly for some of allegiance. What followed that remark was even more revealing. Aides confirmed a heated exchange between William and the Lord Chamberlain the very next morning. Tension boiled over as the Chamberlain, a staunch guardian of ceremonial tradition, questioned whether recent emotional optics might dilute the dignity of royal events. William, normally diplomatic in such confrontations, reportedly cut him off mid-sentence. "If it makes them feel seen," he said sharply, "then it's worth more than any scripted bow." That phrase circulated among palace staff like wildfire. It marked a prince no longer content to be an heir trained in silence, but a man stepping into his father's shadow with intent to reshape it. And yet, not everyone appreciated this emerging clarity. Camilla, queen consort and long accustomed to carefully choreographed public appearances, was reportedly alarmed by William's positioning. Sources say she requested a private conversation, not with William but with the king. She had heard of the remark, and whether by instinct or threat, asked if it required clarification. What was once a background rivalry between the women of the palace was now gaining new dimensions because William wasn't simply standing beside Catherine. He was publicly echoing her ethos, allowing the legacy she shaped to become the foundation of their children's public image. That shift unnerved Camilla. After all, it wasn't so long ago that she was expected to steward the monarchy's softer evolution. Now, that evolution had a new face, and it bore the last name Middleton. In response to the growing unease, William made a subtle but defining move. He cancelled the scheduled protocol review meeting set for the following morning. It was meant to discuss future conduct at mixed-access royal events, a veiled attempt to tighten reins after the garden party incident. By scrapping it entirely, William wasn't just delaying an agenda, he was denying the very idea that the event needed fixing. That cancellation sent a wave of quiet rebellion through palace ranks. Traditionalists felt dismissed. Progressives, emboldened. And in the center of it all stood a prince who had just declared, without pomp or press, that the future he envisioned would not be dictated by hierarchy, but by humanity. And while palace insiders scrambled to contain the optics, one woman moved in silence: Princess Anne, the monarchy's silent strategist. She rarely comments. She never interferes, at least not publicly. But this time, Princess Anne broke protocol to make a quiet but potent declaration. And it wasn't in support of tradition. It was in defense of a mother and her son. Behind her signature stoicism, Anne had just chosen a side. For decades, she had watched the monarchy twist itself in knots, trying to preserve optics while losing touch with substance. She had weathered every storm, buried emotion beneath duty, and kept her voice out of palace politics. But something about the look in Catherine's eyes, something about the soft defiance in Prince Louis's gesture, cracked open an old truth. Anne had long kept hidden this family needed saving from itself. That's why, without fanfare or announcement, Anne drafted an internal note to the Palace Event Coordination Office, offering rare and direct praise. The wording was brief but unmistakable. This year's adjustments reflect a stronger future. Well done to those who had the courage to implement them. In palace language, that was thunder. But it was her private remark to a senior staffer that turned heads even faster. When asked how she felt about Louis's dessert moment, Anne replied, "A good sign. He's learning faster than we did." To those who knew Anne, it was a rare moment of candor, and it sent shockwaves through the ranks. Because if Anne, the most dutiful royal of them all, had chosen to endorse this break from rigid hierarchy, then the cracks in the old system weren't just tolerated, they were being quietly encouraged from within. Tension between Anne and Camilla, already long simmering, began to turn volatile. They had clashed before over legacy, over titles, even over seating arrangements. But now it was deeper. Now it was about the soul of the monarchy, and Anne had just made it clear her loyalty was not to position, but to principle. And that principle now wore the face of Catherine and the heart of a 6-year-old boy who didn't see titles, only people. Then came the move no one could explain. Anne requested a private session with the palace's staff integration office, a unit so rarely engaged by senior royals that some staffers didn't know it existed. It was unprecedented. She sat with them for over an hour, discussing staff treatment, inclusion policies, and accessibility at future family events. She made no public statements, gave no interviews, but her silence was strategic. It allowed her message to echo louder in the right circles, unfiltered by press or spin. And it wasn't just about Louis, it was about who would shape the future. Whispers soon followed. Aides began calling her the quiet queenmaker. Not as a title, but as a warning, because if Anne was choosing to lend her legacy to this new vision, then no one could dismiss it as a passing emotional wave. It was a movement gaining momentum, and its roots were digging in deep. But if Anne was the whisper behind the throne, then what came next was a scream that echoed across royal households, because Charles finally spoke. In a rare direct intervention, King Charles issued a royal communication so unexpected it caught even seasoned palace observers off guard. Framed as a statement of values, it read like a veiled admission, and perhaps even a rebuke to those clinging to the old order. Prince Louis's dessert had triggered more than hearts. It had awakened the crown, delivered with the formality of a king, but laced with undertones of personal reckoning. The statement made no mention of Catherine, no reference to the garden party, no direct nod to the viral moment that had upended the palace's polished facade. Yet, between the lines, the message roared. Charles wrote of a monarchy that must evolve through acts of empathy, humility, and human connection, for it is these that forge lasting bonds, not station nor ceremony. For the public, it was a dignified embrace of the moment. But within the palace walls, it was nothing short of a political earthquake. Senior courtiers, already rattled by recent events, struggled to interpret the silence surrounding the statement's true target. But insiders didn't need confirmation to recognize the timing. The king had spoken just days after Queen Camilla was reportedly seen leaving a private meeting in tears, a meeting many believe was an attempt to reinstate protocol boundaries that had been quietly undone. One source close to the meeting claimed that Charles had interrupted her, dismissed her concerns, and responded with uncharacteristic finality. That boy showed the country more in one moment than we've done in years. The remark, if true, laid bare the magnitude of the divide between the traditionalist arm of the monarchy and the emotional, more human monarchy Charles now appeared to be endorsing. Speculation spread like wildfire. Had Charles finally chosen a successor not just in blood, but in spirit? Whispers inside the Privy Council hinted that Catherine was being quietly positioned for even greater influence, not just as consort-in-waiting, but as a defining voice of the next chapter. Parliamentary figures began to take notice. The Guardian ran a bold headline: "The child who softened the crown," accompanied by a photo of Louis mid-laugh, dessert in hand. Overnight, the monarchy's narrative shifted from outmoded formality to reawakening warmth, and not everyone was ready to play along. Queen Camilla's schedule, once packed with ceremonial appearances and patronage engagements, began to empty. Events were cancelled, meetings postponed. Some said it was illness. Others knew better. In the span of a few weeks, her presence began to shrink, while Catherine's profile quietly rose. It was subtle, but undeniable. a shift in gravitational pull where once Camilla had shaped the royal calendar, now she seemed to hover in its shadow. And all of it traced back to a boy, a spoonful of dessert, and a mother who dared to let her tears be seen. With power shifting and alliances exposed, one final gesture from Prince Louis reignited the storm, this time from the heart of his own family. Royal children are rarely allowed public opinion, but in private, they watch, they learn. And when Prince George reportedly asked Catherine, "Was I ever that kind when I was little?" it opened a painful window into how each royal child carries different burdens, and how Louis's simple gesture had become a mirror none of them expected. The question didn't come with malice, only curiosity. But for Catherine, it landed with a thud. George had been her first, the one thrust under the harshest lights, the one taught first how to wave, bow, pose, and smile. His childhood had been the most tightly managed, the most protected, and, in some ways, the most suffocated. His question wasn't about Louis, it was about himself, and behind his eyes was the weight of a role he'd never asked for but was born into. That a single act of kindness from his younger brother had made him question his own nature shattered something within Catherine. Charlotte, ever the quiet observer and fiercely perceptive, had her own response. Later that same day, she was overheard telling an aide, "I want to be more like Louis." It was innocent, but it struck a nerve. The media had transformed Louis into a symbol of purity and compassion overnight, and his siblings, still children, navigating titles, expectations, and rivalries, were now facing emotional confusion that even Catherine hadn't anticipated. Inside the nursery wing, the three of them had a hushed conversation that made its way through the walls of the palace. "But Mummy says it's okay to break rules if it's kind," Louis had said, defending himself after a playful scolding from George about not asking first. The phrase stuck. It wasn't just a child's defense, it was a seed, planted by Catherine, now blossoming into something real. But outside that cocoon, the storm was brewing. William, already navigating the fallout of his own whispered allegiances, now faced a new anxiety. Sibling division, stoked by public adoration. In private, he confided in an aide that he feared the press would begin casting roles. Louis the angel, George the heir under pressure, Charlotte the overlooked. It had happened before in royal history, and he knew how damaging it could be. To prevent the fracture, Catherine stepped in, not as Princess of Wales, but as a mother who had seen the walls close in too many times. She arranged a private meeting with the children, no tutors, no aides, just the five of them as a family. There, they spoke not of legacy or titles, but of kindness, what it meant, why it mattered, and how each of them carried it in different ways. Still, unease lingered. Aides close to the family began to express concern that Louis's public image was being shaped too fast, too early. He had become a symbol without consent, and now the burden of public expectation loomed over his innocent heart. Catherine could feel it too, how quickly the sweetness could turn into scrutiny, how a moment of warmth could be spun into pressure. And though the family stood united, the cracks were forming not from conflict, but from the sheer weight of perception that none of them, especially the children, were prepared to carry. But it wasn't just the children who were watching. The public had already made up their mind, and their voices would reshape the palace narrative overnight. The tabloids lit up, social media exploded, and for the first time since Diana, the public didn't just admire a royal, they felt them. Tears, stories, and artwork poured in, all inspired by the moment Prince Louis chose compassion over protocol. It wasn't about a dessert anymore. It was about who the monarchy could be. What began as a quiet act in a controlled royal setting erupted into a cultural moment that the palace couldn't contain. Across digital platforms, hashtags surged, number Prince of Hearts, number Little Louis, number Catherine's son, turning a 6-year-old into a symbol of emotional clarity in an age of polished detachment. It didn't take long before the letters came first in dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Handwritten notes from single mothers, emails from veterans, messages from nurses, teachers, and young children, all echoing the same message. Thank you for reminding us that kindness still matters. But it wasn't just the public whose hearts were moved. Former palace insiders, long silent, long forgotten, began stepping forward with stories of Catherine from her early years. One told of how she once stopped in the middle of a state reception to comfort a crying staffer whose parent had died that morning. Another recalled how she quietly helped pay for a palace assistant's relocation after a personal crisis. These weren't headlines at the time. They were memories. But now, they resurfaced as validation of something the world had finally seen with their own eyes, that this Princess of Wales had spent years walking a tightrope of silence, all while planting seeds of a softer, stronger future behind the scenes. And then came the piece that tore through the media like a torch through fog. An op-ed written by one of Princess Diana's most trusted former staffers. Its headline was simple: "Louis is what she dreamt of." In it, the author described how Diana once whispered during a quiet moment that she hoped her future grandchildren would never feel bound by fear or formality, that they'd be allowed to feel, to give, to connect without caution. That op-ed didn't just go viral, it shattered the walls of royal messaging. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't being controlled from inside the palace. It was being written by the people. Caught off guard, the royal PR machine faltered. Briefings were postponed. Statements were delayed. But as the tidal wave of public support grew, even the most cautious voices within the firm began to admit there was no containing this. In an unexpected pivot, the palace announced a new initiative. The Royal Moments of Kindness Fund, aimed at recognizing and supporting acts of empathy across the United Kingdom. It was framed as a forward-looking gesture, but to many, it was an admission. The system had been moved, not by a policy, not by a ceremony, but by a child who offered a dessert and a mother who allowed it to happen. But as the world embraced the moment, one final twist left the monarchy breathless, because what Catherine did next wasn't scripted. It was a mother's defiant act of love. No speech, no interviews, just one deliberate gesture during a high-profile engagement. Following week, and the meaning was unmistakable. Catherine, Princess of Wales, had sent a message through royal symbolism that generations would remember. It was not just about Louis, it was about the future she now intended to build. As cameras flashed and the nation watched, Catherine stepped into the public eye not with words, but with precision. Hanging delicately from her wrist was a charm. A silver dessert spoon, small but impossibly loud in what it represented. Insiders confirmed it bore an engraving. "Let them eat together." Not cake, together. A phrase that redefined inclusion within the royal machine. And in her ears, glistening beneath the polished curls of royal perfection, were the late Princess Diana's sapphire earrings worn for the very first time since Catherine had inherited her new title. This was no coincidence. This was a coronation of spirit, if not yet crown. It was her declaration of who she was becoming and what she was prepared to challenge. Then, in a moment that stole the oxygen from the room, Catherine approached the arranged photo op Camilla already in position and walked past without a word, without a glance, with nothing but the weight of silence wrapped in clarity. It was the first time the two women had been seen together since the dessert incident. And this? This was not reconciliation. This was Catherine drawing a line with grace, but no apology. The palace, caught between tradition and transformation, scrambled to adjust. But before the press could speculate too wildly, a statement was issued. The Princess of Wales will lead a new child empathy initiative, focusing on kindness, inclusion, and emotional education in early development. The announcement did more than just spark conversation. It dismantled precedent. Camilla's long-anticipated literacy campaign, once expected to take center stage this season, was abruptly shelved. The replacement wasn't accidental, it was strategic, and everyone knew it. And the public's on the side. Public? They had already chosen their side. Polls flooded in. 87% favoured Catherine's way, calling her a modern queen in all but name. People didn't just agree with her, they trusted her. They believed she understood the weight of power and chose to wield it with humanity. In coffee shops, classrooms, and kitchens across the country, the name Louis became shorthand for compassion. Catherine had done what no press office, no royal biography, and no staged interview ever could. She had allowed her child's instinct to become the seed of a new royal era. And as that seed grew, it began melting the frozen walls of a monarchy long accused of being too distant, too cold, too controlled. With one gesture, one quiet moment, the heart of the firm had been pierced, and all because a boy shared his dessert with someone the crown was never supposed to see. And so, with a single act of kindness, the youngest heir didn't just win hearts, he cracked the palace walls wide open, revealing what royalty could become when led by empathy. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.